Good afternoon, audience, online and physical audience. Today is yet another day when we meet here to exchange ideas, to share, and to generate new ideas from what we gather here. It's an opportune moment, therefore, for me to invite you to this meeting with the hope that we'll get out more landed and ready to do more than what we have already done. My name is Mary Wanyoike from the Department of History and Archaeology. And my role here is really simple. My role is to introduce our speaker today. Her name is Valentine Masika. This is not her first time to present to us. This is actually her second time. During her first presentation, Masika was presenting her MA project entitled Political Ecology of Ogiek Marginalization. She graduated in 2020 from the University of Rotterdam, Erasmus of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Before that, her first degree was from Kenyatta University, where she pursued environmental science. I had to ask that detail because of the kind of expanse of information that I got from her PhD topic, MA and PhD topic, which you're about to listen to. Now, today, she presents her PhD project work entitled Contested Frontiers, Why the Search for Energy is Energizing Resistance in the Countryside. We hope to get a lot of information from this topic, considering that she's still again going back to the Ogiek and looking at the various parties that are involved in these frontiers that she talks about. So without wasting time, I want to introduce and present Nadako to you. We remain quiet, listen, and appreciate her work, which I believe is very interesting. Okay, before I sit down, I'm sorry, this is where I should have started. I want to apologize for the late start of this meeting. We had a technical hitch. Now we are ready to go, and therefore I welcome you back to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mary, for the nice introduction. I'm Valentine, and I'm the one presenting today. I previously talked about the Ogiek people, and I got some good feedback and engagement. And now I thought I should come and also get more engagement for my PhD topic. So I think we can go straight to it. The topic that you see is the general idea of my dissertation, but in it there are very many elements. And today I'm mostly talking about the historical context of the conflicts that I'm looking at. So to start off, as they're waiting to fix the technical issue. So I'll first start discussing a bit about my case studies, then talk about the history as a context of my case studies. So I'll start off with a quote from a recent article by Sven Beckett. The quote reads, "History of the making of the modern world is a history of the expansion of commodity frontiers." And in this case, the commodity frontiers I'm talking about are the processes and sites of resources into the expanding capital world economy. So where the resources that are needed for the exponential growth that we are searching are coming from. So these are the commodity frontiers. And the more expansion we are searching for, the more we encroach on these commodity frontiers. And most of this now, the new commodity frontiers are located in peripheries, in countrysides, in areas that were previously not encroached by developmental activities. Just a minute. There's a technical issue that is being addressed. Yes. Okay. Yes. So next and next, I've already covered that. Yes. So in this presentation, I'm looking at the history as the context of the resistance. And just to go back, so I've talked about the commodity frontiers in general, in the global sense, where expansion or the economic expansion is leading into encroachment in these peripheral areas. So, but in the Kenyan context, just as many other countries that are trying to advance economically, the Kenyan case also follows the trend. So we want to grow, to develop, and we develop agendas that allow us to get to those goals that we wish to achieve. So one of our famous master plan is the Vision 2030, which talks about, of course, one of the main goals is to ensure that there's enough energy for our growth. As we know, energy is one of the major drivers of development, whether we are talking about electricity, all other areas that even transportation needs energy. So as a result, we are searching for new sources of energy, whether it's still existing sources of energy like coal, as in the case of the Lamu coal plant suggestion, or wind energy, like in the case of like Turkana wind power, or oil exploration, like in the case of Turkana oil exploration. And these are some of the examples of the expansion into these periphery areas, because as you note, Turkana, Marsabit, and Lamu County were previously really ignored parts of the country, but because they have the potential of contributing to the energy development that we're looking at, we have developed such projects there. So when these projects come about, there's resistance that emerges from the locals of these areas as a result of various issues, including land rights, exclusion in decision making, and potential or actual environmental harm. And in political ecology, we define this as the conflicts that arise as ecological distribution conflicts. So the core question in my presentation is mostly looking at the history as the context of the conflicts. So just to give you an idea of my PhD case studies, The Lamu coal plant was supposed to be set up in Lamu, the coal was supposed to be imported from South Africa and also gotten from Mui region in Kenya. So it was backed by the Chinese, proposed at around 2008, but then eventually, as a result of the conflict, it's now on hold. And some of the issues that were raised by those opposing its construction were issues of lack of free prior informed consent, and also the impending environmental and social impacts that will come about. So those are some of the reasons those who are opposed to the plant raised. Yeah, and in the Turkana case, this is an ongoing project, of course, started by Tullow Oil way back after the discovery in 2012. And it has been an on and off project. And at the moment, it's still a bit, the company is no longer on the ground, but it's planning to come back quite soon. But as the project has progressed, there have been several issues raised by environmental organizations and also the communities on the ground. And the issues are around the benefit sharing, including the formula of how much the community gets, how much the county government gets, how much the national government gets. And also there have been some environmental concerns and land compensation issues. Next. And my final case study is the Turkana Wind Power Project, which was completed and is already supplying energy to the national grid as of 2018. But there are still issues to do with the land or the process of how the investor acquired the land. And in this case, there's a ruling by the court that actually has instructed the investor to return back the land to the community, which return back is very loosely used because the project is already set up and it's already working. And some of the issues raised in this case include the consultation of the community before the land was leased, and even issues of community lacking electricity while electricity is produced in their residence and served to the other nation. So those are the key projects that I'm looking at and some of the key issues. But when I'm talking about the issues, if you glance at them, they can easily be interpreted to be normal issues that occur in any project. If you interpret it as a business, it will be like a bad day in business, or project-wise, you can say these are the negative implications of the project. Or if you come from a mainstream economic thought, you will think that these are externalities that some of them cannot be avoided. But when you look at how the communities and the actors involved are framing the issue, is when we will notice that there are deeper meanings of what they're saying. So, and that is how I come to my next section, where I talk about struggle of meaning. So when I say struggle of meaning, I'm talking about how the framing of the issues reveal that the projects mean different things to the different stakeholders involved. So when you're talking about the project being profitable, but it's profitable to who? Because some actors feel like it's not profitable to them. So there's a struggle over meaning, what means what to who. So let's take an example of the Lamu case, where the major frames that are used to describe the project by those opposing it are they're talking about the coal is death, climate change has no place for coal, and this is being termed as a project that is related to neocolonialism, where they coined a term called decolonize, using the word decolonization and also coal to show the association with coal with colonization. And their request was, we don't want it, no, please cancel it. And but the project proponents, who include the state agencies and also the investors, are talking about the good of the project. So the good of the project for the local development, national unification, national economic benefits. And even in their speeches, they're talking about this will ensure that Lamu is connected to the rest of Kenya. So that's how the proponents are framing, were framing the project. When you look at the Turkana oil case, the main request from those who are resisting even the company from coming back now, they're talking about we want a share of the profits. And there are also undertones of environmental damages that are caused by the company. And they are also talking about land rights. Due to the Communal Land Act that was passed in 2016. So they are using that to really request for compensation from the investor, and its compensation is ongoing partly, but not to the community, rather to the county government. And in this project, of course, when oil was discovered in Turkana, I'm sure some Kenyans, even who had not known of Turkana, knew of Turkana because there were talks of it being a national resource that will propel Kenya to greater heights. And yeah, of course, oil exploration was also supported in the Kenyan Vision 2030. And so we see the struggle of meaning for what the project means for who. So for the proponents, it means national development, but for the opponents, it means that we are being denied what is rightfully ours. And for the Turkana wind power case, the major grievance from the community was we want our land back. So they're claiming that the land was acquired through illegal means, and that is their request. But on the other hand, the proponents, right from the start of the project, were talking about how the project will bring about local development. It's clean energy, so it supports that just energy transitions. And they also spoke about the arid land being inhabited. So by us bringing the project, then we are making this land valuable in some way. So those are the framings of the project by the different groupings. And I'm loosely using the word proponents or opponents, but it ranges. It's not that the proponents are just the investors and the government. There are also, of course, some community members who wish for the project to continue, and some who don't. So even some members of the state also are opponents in this case. So there's no clear-cut distinction between who are the proponents and who are the opponents. At various points, even in some politicians change tune and turn from being proponents to opponents. Yes, so I've talked about the framings, but when we look at them, we also need to ask ourselves, where are they coming from? So these frames, they're not neutral, they're very sensational and timeless. They change as even from the project starts and as it goes on. So they are very much anchored in history. So history shapes the terrain of the framing contests because these communities are not framing these projects in vacuum. They draw from their collective memory, past injustices, and long-standing grievances. So that is part of the reason why looking at the history is important. So political ecology allows us to look at these conflicts in a way that ensures we are able to see how history is shaping the social relations of power and legacies, and also it provides the context for the injustices because the historical narratives are also used in the competing context where there's conflicting interpretations of history by the different groups. While one group might say, oh, okay, we have occupied this land since our ancestral times, the company might say, but this land is uninhabited. So there are different interpretations of history between those groups. Yes, so political ecology insists that current ecological disputes are embedded in historical processes, and these processes include post-colonial marginalization, colonial land appropriation, and development policies that prioritize extraction. So that is the lens that I'm using to look at this, the historical processes in these cases. And one of the things that is revealed when we adopt the political ecology lens is that historical marginalization and unequal access go in hand in most of these cases. So in a way, political ecology is linking environmental conflicts to historical geographies of power. Communities in all the three areas that I'm looking at have been sidelined in most of the national development agendas. And this can be seen in their political representation and also the remoteness and inaccessibility of their areas, where even roads getting there are difficult. So this has not started now. It happened from even pre-colonial times. And as a result of the prolonged neglect by the government, there's a mistrust towards state-driven projects, including the energy projects. Hence, they see these projects as wanting to repeat the patterns of exclusion and exploitation. And yeah, another point we see is the colonial legacies and green grabbing. So some political ecology scholars argue that green development can replicate colonial patterns. And of course, colonial patterns of naming even the pastoral communal lands as unproductive are very prevalent here. Like in the Lecturcana wind power case, that is the case that the company makes so that they don't compensate the community. So they are claiming that the land is not inhabited, it's not being used. So we see some undertones of such colonial legacies in this case. But as communities are fighting against these framings of the project proponents, saying that their land is inhabited, they are using their culture in form of their culture and also their relationship with the land and memory to explain why what this land means to them and why they need to be compensated or these projects don't need to happen. So for them, they're explaining that the land is not just an economic resource. It holds spiritual, cultural, and historical significance for them. And in the Lamu case, they heavily borrowed from their Swahili cultural identity and their status as a UNESCO World Heritage status to frame their the project as a threat to not only their land, but also their culture and their way of life, because they heavily depend on tourism, but it comes about as a result of their heritage and their cultural identity. In the Marsabit case, the protests were also due to restrictions from them accessing some grazing routes because of the company had fenced off some of the routes that they use, and also in these parts there were also some sacred places for them. So that was some of the reasons that fueled the resistance against the wind power. And another important historical element is about broken promises and disillusionment of development. So in the development paradox, projects are justified, of course, by the state and the investors in the name of national growth, but mostly the residents, communities living around these projects are often left worse off. So these communities have witnessed from time to time the promises of past development projects not being delivered. So companies come in and say, oh, when we build this project here, you will have a school here, you will have water here, but that has not happened since time immemorial. So they're very skeptical about the projects coming in now, and hence their resistance. For example, in Lamu, even before the proposal of the coal plant, there was the harbor and other developmental projects that were conducted as part of the LAPSET project. And up to now, communities are still fighting for compensation in those cases. So what will be different now? Why should we accept the coal plant? And an important point about history is also the local learning from history, the local and global movements. The communities and also environmental organizations involved in championing for the rights of those who are marginalized in this case are learning from both the local experience and also global experience. So it's not, these projects are not at the first to maybe in Kenya, like for the case of the oil and the coal plant, but globally they are not, it's not exclusively that they have not happened. So learning from the history of other groupings in other places who have been affected is an important part of this. In the Turkana case, when oil was discovered, some of the coalitions took their members to go and do research in Nigeria, in Ghana, in South Africa, where oil has been mined, and just find out what happened to the communities that were around this project. And even in the coal plant, there was also a team that went to South Africa to do studies. So in a way, history is informing the current movements of how others proceeded and how maybe they should proceed in their fight for what they want. So, yeah. So in my case studies, I just came up with a general conclusion that of what happened in this case. And in the Turkana wind power case, resistance was shaped by colonial era labeling of the land as inhabited, which denied the resident communities compensation and also recognition. Actually, and the company made an argument that there are three communities living there. So the El Molo, Rendile, Samburu, and Turkana. So the company's argument was, as per the Kenyan constitutions, we don't have indigenous people's rights. But we have marginalized rights of the marginalized communities. So the argument was because so Turkana, Rendile, and Samburu are not indigenous communities. Only the El Molo are considered as such. And because the El Molo are not so close to the project area, then they are not affected as a result. So there's no need for compensating communities because they are neither indigenous nor will they be affected by the project. So that was what was being used. But residents in retaliation drew on memory, land-based identity, and indigenous rights discourse to resist. And they did this in various avenues. There were protests. There was a court case, which they won, but the ruling has not been implemented yet. And in the Lamu case, resistance invoked centuries of Swahili cultural heritage and UNESCO protection status, because the coal plant was now seen as a threat to not only as a health threat, but also as a threat to their way of life. And also the communities there recognize and are themselves and categorize themselves as indigenous indigenous communities. So they were also using the discourse of indigenous people's rights to fight for their demands. And in the Turkana oil case, the community's resistance is shaped by a long history of neglect, unfulfilled promises, and exploitative land deals dating back to the colonial trust lands. So we see here the discourse of, and also they used the attachment to the land and their neglect from the national development agenda as a way of saying, now that you've discovered oil, you want Turkana to be part of Kenya, but previously we were not considered as such, even when it comes to political seats and other allocations of development agenda, including money. So now they saw themselves at the center of attention, while previously they were excluded from all this. So they used that discourse to demand for compensation before the oil left their county, and they are still demanding that up to now. There are still court cases talking about also the environmental damages that the company has done there. So the fight is still ongoing. In actually all of the cases, the Lamu coal plant case is still active in court, though some of the investors have pulled out because of the issues that have emerged. The Turkana oil case, there's a case ongoing on suing tallow oil for the environmental damages. And in the Turkana wind power case, the case still remains because the judgment has not been enacted as ruled by the court. So just a reflection again on why looking at the historical context of this conflicts matter. So the first is history reveals the structural and institutional injustices that are present in these cases. So history will enable us to explain why communities distrust processes and why they mobilize even before the harm occurs. Because it's very odd for someone to come and tell you that, oh, I'm bringing this project, it will bring about a lot of local development, you will get schools, you will get water, you will get a lot of money, and you just are against the project from the onset. So history of mistrust, of broken promises enables us to understand why the communities are mobilizing. And then history also helps us to clarify unequal power relations. So the long-term powers asymmetries that have occurred even during pre-colonial times, colonial times, and post-colonial times can only be explained by histories. Why do Turkana still feel marginalized in the Kenya today, even after years of maybe development, of what may be considered development in their area? Then another point is also history strengthens claims to justice and legitimacy. So as you've seen, the communities are using their indigenous identities, their ancestral land, and their also heritage status to build stronger frames when making their cases. And some of them might be considered successful because in the Lamu coal plant case, there was a win because the net canceled the license that was issued to the investor. So there's a sense of victory for some of them when they're using these frames. And another important point is history connects local struggles to global patterns. So history enables us to connect what is happening in the Kenyan case to broader political economy of environmental justice in other places, whether it's in the global south or global north countries. So in that sense, history reveals the roots of inequality, the memory of exclusion, and the foundation of these resistances in various areas. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation, and I welcome any input, questions, or discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valentine, for that very interesting. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Valentine, for that very interesting presentation. I appreciate, especially you are going back to the roots and using history for the purposes of explaining the conflicts that have been among the various communities that you have discussed. I do not expect you to go that far in that direction, considering what you told me about environmental science. Now I can see history fits in very well. So Valentine's discussion of contested spaces takes us to, or makes us think about the past, the present, and the future. That should draw from the past to explain the present and to give us a vision into the future, that if these conflicts are not dealt with, if the contestations that are there are not discussed and solved, then there is a possibility of those continued conflicts. What I gathered from her discussion is that, like politicians say, there are no permanent enemies. When she talked about the pros and the anti of the project, and each of them, she told us, have good reasons to be against or for the project, and to jump camp when their grievances are addressed. That's what I gathered from her. And therefore, even as she talked about this, what I appreciated maybe was her methodology. I also listened to what she used to come up with her synthesis or conclusions, as it says. And she uses a historical perspective. I've already noted that. And she also uses a case study approach, where she hopes to gather a lot of details from the communities involved, and especially in relation to the projects that she's analyzing. More to it, a cost-benefit analysis of the projects is what she does in terms of viewpoint. So what I gathered from what was saying was that, what else? Our disciplines are separate. Our disciplines can also provide rich analysis, rich backgrounds to what we are studying and looking to understand in this kind of situation. I will not go into details because we have a discussant, and I'm not about to take the role of a discussant. I was only trying to summarize a bit of what I had, and therefore be able to ask this question, which she can, it's just a comment really. And the comment is about what I've just talked about, the fact that times change, and therefore historical narratives also change. And that is why we are always under constant reconstruction of what we have written about the past. So you mentioned stories of people who were there before and stories of people who came later and owned land. And this aspect is important in telling us, therefore, these contestations are based on what time frame and what reasons. It's just a comment. Thank you. Maybe after that, I can now invite the discussant who will take us through what his view is about the presentation. Before then we move on to the next phase of this discussion. Dr. Ken Obongi, welcome.
Thank you very much, our moderator, for this seminar today, Mwalimu Wanyoike. And thank you again for sharing in this responsibility that I was given for making those very critical comments about what Valentine was saying. Valentine, this is, you know, an eye-opening presentation, and I feel sufficiently challenged to think about the history and politics of ecology. At some point, as Mary said, you became more a historian than a political scientist that you are, and my very good friend Oscar Tele from political science is here. Looks like we are increasingly converting her into a good historian. It's really satisfying that, you know, once again, you have come to enrich our ongoing conversation on multidisciplinary seminar that we're having this semester. So thank you very much, my sister. Now, to respond to your discussion this afternoon, I want to do three things, and I don't know how long I have. One, just to highlight my understanding of what you are talking about in terms of key points, really. And then number two, I give what I see as some kind of critique. And then finally, I will highlight, you know, some conceptual framing, which perhaps I think might help you to problematize some of the notions that you are very ably deployed in this paper, and that you have very well narrated. So you know, my understanding from listening to you, and thank you for sending me your slides earlier, because I had a chance to look at them. I have a feeling that you are saying that Kenya's very aggressive push for energy expansion, driven by Vision 2030, which is a development blueprint, has sparked some resistance, especially in marginal rural regions. You gave us the example of Turkana, Marsabit, Rendile, Lamu, in the coastal areas of the country. Now, this resistance, you suggested that they are rooted in concerns about, you know, land rights, social exclusion, and, you know, real or imagined environmental harm. And you framed these tensions as ecological distribution conflicts. Very nice phrase that I was coming in contact with probably for the first time. In this, then, you suggest that, you know, energy development for the last few decades has become central to Kenya's aspiration for modernization and economic growth. Modernization and economic growth, of course, within the framework of national development, and what I've just said, we call Vision 2030. And you depicted a situation where local resistance is not just opposition. It is a demand for justice, a demand for recognition, and a demand for inclusion, if I understood you well. And this reaction, you seem to suggest, arises from what you call historical marginalization. You know, lack of consultation or what you seem to see as benefit sharing, and of course, fears of environmental degradation or disposition. Now, the one thing I found fascinating is that you very clearly said that these are not merely technical or economic issues, and that's what I find interesting in your presentation, but ecological distribution challenges and conflicts, which you seem to see as struggles over who gains and who loses from projects that touch on environmental transformation. Now, you place this resistance within historical patterns of neglect and exclusion. So it has that binary of neglect and exclusion, which make what in official circles we call development to feel like a new form of exploitation. Now, this approach in terms of, if we look at it in form of, strengths, I find the use of ecological distribution conflicts, it adds a very interesting analytical depth, by showing how environmental struggles are embedded within the context of social injustices. And I find this very, very relevant in terms of the debates that we have had in our country that touch on development policy, neoliberal thinking about these policies, which seem to not to think of the local people, they applied their interests and also their fears. What excited me most, in fact, I almost jumped off my seat this morning when I was reading your slides, is the fact that you demonstrated a lot of historical awareness. That's why I was teasing my friend Oscar that we are increasingly winning you to the history side of things. You anchored resistance in the broader historical context. And this has helped to, make your presentation avoid, very simplistic approach or what we call presentistic approach, where there's a lot of anachronism in the approach of historical issues, where we use the present to look at the past, and we use the biases of the present to look back. And that's why I said you are coming across as more of a historian than a political scientist. And the other strength that I see in your work when you finally finish it is that it highlights, rural communities, not as passive victims, of neoliberal approach to development, but as active, political agents. And I like the narratives that you gave of the cases they have taken to court, and some are still in court. I hope we will not be accused of discussing matters that are in court, but I thought that is really important, particularly when we are talking about these communities that have been marginal for very long in Kenya's post-colony. Now, but I also see some room. You have probably some room for improvement, things that you need to think about. One, of course, maybe this is because of my bias as a historian. Your write-up, your presentation is wanting in specifics, and that's why I thought probably it could benefit from concrete examples. If we are talking about the wind project in Turkana or the coal plant in Lamu, we need to mention specific actors, the key actors, the state the corporations involved, the NGOs, and the affected communities and the responses they give. Which groupings are we talking about? Which state agencies are we talking about? Who is negotiating? What are some of the localized, narratives that will bring out the content of the resistance that you are talking about? So to do those specifics, probably in a fairly ethnographic ways, might be more helpful, particularly those of us who are interested in historical narratives. The second one is I find you are a bit you're a bit limited nuance on the role of the state. The state is treated uniformly. When I listened to you, it is important to distinguish which state agents are we talking about. Are they from the central government? Are they from the county governments? That is a new experiment in Kenya today. Are we talking about technocrats who have interest in this project, or are we talking about political elites in this case? And of course, the third one is you seem to treat resistance as an homogeneous phenomenon. It looks like what is happening in Lamu is the same thing happening in Turkana, Rendir, and many other places. I was looking forward where a narrative that glosses over internal divisions within communities or cases of co-option by the political elites of some of these communities. That would be of interest. So I'm suggesting that perhaps if you relook at resistance, it might be more complex than probably the portrait that you gave us this afternoon. Now, so much then for that. Let me just give some reflections as my last point of certain conceptual, framing, which I thought probably might be helpful. My first one comes from, I was involved in a World Health Organization project on the deployment of genetically modified mosquitoes as a control for malaria and dengue. And my role in this global project, controlled by our principal researcher from Imperial College London, Professor Mumford, he's late now. I was looking at what we call community engagement. And when I was doing that, I came across a book of James Scott. I don't know whether you've seen it. It's a very interesting book entitled Seeing Like the State. Yes, 1998. Now, my reading of James Scott and listening to you and reading your work, I thought probably it could have helped you a bit to contextualize the role of the state in implementing some of these projects in previously marginal or still marginal communities. Scott critiques how modern states attempt to impose top-down. In Kenya now we talk about bottom-up, but top-down standardized systems on complex local realities. He argues that state-led development fails when it ignores local knowledge and reduces diverse socio-ecological systems into simplified forms of legible to the state interests. I honestly, as I listened to you, thought that you might benefit from this kind of conceptual framing if you understood the resistance of communities towards these state-sponsored energy projects. Energy expansion, might not be complete if you don't explore the logic behind state-led development, in my view. Maybe Scott could describe Kenya's Vision 2030 and its energy push as examples of high modernist schemes, large-scale, technocratic, blind to local systems of land use or governance. So maybe you might go back and see whether you can benefit from that kind of conceptual framing within which you can understand some of the very complex issues that you are dealing with. The second one is, which I suppose probably you have seen, is trying to understand these things within the context of what is called the global commons. And I'm referring to Eliana Ostram's work on governing the commons, 1990. This is a Nobel laureate. I'm sure you might have not missed his book on governing the global commons, 1990. Armstrong tried to debunk Gareth Hardin's theory of the tragedy of commons, very old theory, 1968, if my memory serves me well. Gareth Hardin's theory of the tragedy of the commons. Ostrom debunked this by showing that communities have their own sustainable systems, including rules, sanctions, and collective governance. So the key insight here will be local people aren't chaotic, as sometimes the state thinks. They often protect their shared resources through carefully evolved practices. And that's why you find that when the state comes with these high-sounding policy initiatives, they don't just say, hallelujah, amen, you have come. No, they push back. Maybe, Ostrom will help you understand that. And some of the communities that you talked about, the Rendile, even the Turkana, they are still steeped in the idea of the global commons. The grazing lands, the open places that don't belong to any individual, but they belong to the community. That might be of benefit. I'm currently part of the team that supervises a student from the University of Toronto, a Kenyan student, John Kamanga, who is doing some work in Maasai. The project or the PhD thesis is entitled From Commons to Compounds, trying to examine shifts in land tenure in Maasai land and how that has affected Maasai identity. And I was just discussing with him the other day. I said the same thing that I'm saying to you about Eliana Armstrong's thinking. And finally, you might also want to benefit from, as I finish, Vandana Shiva, this Indian activist's work. She wrote her book quite a while back, 1988, which I like reading even up to now, Staying Alive. That's the title of the book. Shivaji adds a very feminist and decolonial perspective, emphasizing that indigenous and peasant communities have long safeguarded the commons. So development, projects often destroy these relationships, enclose communal lands, and harm women, the poor, and other vulnerable groups. So she reframes the commons not as chaotic, but as spaces of community and care. So in summary, just to wrap up this, what I'm saying is that while your presentation very effectively, very ably outlined the resistance to Kenya's energy development, I think it could benefit from the epistemology, the epistemic framing critiqued by James Scott in his book, Seeing Like the State, 1998, where states impose legibility and control over complex local systems. Similarly, I think you can benefit from integrating Eliana Ostram's Governing the Commons, which unpacks the tragedy of the commons myth by showing how communities develop their own sustainable governance system. And Vadana Siva's Staying Alive further contextualizes these resistances, the kind that you are talking about, as a feminist and ecological struggles against commodification and the destruction of communal worlds. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Mbongi, for expounding on her topic. I believe now she's way ahead, having you having moved her forward. Now, without taking time, I want to invite responses from the audience, the physical audience first. Yes, Dr. Gona. Oscar. Another one at the back. Okay. We'll have you as I mentioned. So we move from Dr. Gona, we go to Oscar, we go, yeah, and then you at the back. So that's, he can respond to this first.
Thanks, Mary. Mine is a comment. Mine is a comment. Thanks for the presentation. I'm thinking about the problem of managing expectations. I think with the history experiences, one wonders why the communities still embrace these broken promises. So where is the management of expectations? Maybe you need to interrogate that and maybe bring it into your work just to enrich that. It's a comment, but you can also talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you, the moderator. Valentine, how are you? We meet again. Mwalimu Gona, thanks for your comment. In a sense, you read my mind, but in a different jargon. I'm actually talking about politics of anticipation. That is what caused me to make this contribution. But I'm actually seeing convergence, what Valentine is doing and my own work on China-Africa relation. Same projects, same approach, close to a similar approach, but again, different orientation in the following manner. The paper I published in African Affairs, Elite Coalition and Politics of Contestation, we will actually focus on 3 projects: SGR, the Turkana project, and the question of local resistance, pushback. When Associate Dean was talking about state-led, the top-down, in fact, to make it clearer, policies in Nairobi, policies are formulated in Nairobi. We know about public participation, that's theoretical. Some individuals are put in a corner and told, okay, this is public participation, we'll give you money to tick the boxes. We don't know how the ground looks like. So the thing is put in place somewhere here in Nairobi, and then now gets to the local level for implementation. The local communities are not aware about the projects. So the national elites, the big talk about jobs, the big talk about we'll bring this and all those numbers, are made to appear like Jesus is coming tomorrow. Yes. So when the actual things happen, if the same politicians in Nairobi failing their supporters to have them, to fix them for those few opportunities, the locals are not considered. And that's why we now have this. So it's you know, a mix or rather inconsistency. Yes, that's the right term. Inconsistency between policy implementation, policy formulation, and implementation. And I'll encourage Valentine to look at that paper we published. There's something you will draw from that. I wish my students were here. The reason why I usually follow history department's event, you know, when I'm teaching research methods, problem statements, and I tell students, you cannot understand problem statement without history of this issue. So let's go back to the history. Now, Valentine's theorization is actually what is anchoring our paper, the history, the colonial history. Our argument is based on politics of anticipation, that you know, inconsistency between policy formulation and implementation. That's what is causing the pushback from local community. And that pushback is what Malim Ombongi was talking about. The agency. You know, in China, Africa research, there was this argument that, you know, we don't know what African societies are doing about China. And so this project, in a sense, have given space for the local community to also wake up and tell the state, you are making deals in Beijing, but us here, we don't know the manner of those deals. So I'm actually happy that I made the choice to come here today. So I have really enjoyed, and Valentine, I hope we can sustain this conversation in the interest of time. The last brief comment, moderator, if you may allow me. I saw local versus global. This is environmental movements. I'll be keen to understand their influences to the local community and how the local community appreciate is it climate change? Now we're talking about climate change awareness. The reason why I'm asking this question is because of the things we do up there in IDS, Afrobarometer survey. And we have come to understand that there is low levels of awareness among the local communities as far as these environmental concerns is. So I'm just more interested in terms of the influence. So thank you so much. And I have talked much, but.
Thank you, Valentine. My question, or is it comment, that when you use the concept of framing, is there a way in which you can use that concept in a manner that can focus on some particular aspects, how they are framed at the local level, and how the same aspects are framed at the state level, so that we see the impact of framing on the genesis of what we call resistance. We can be able probably to read resistance as having its genesis in incompatible frames. And we can see incompatible frames in two ways. One, in the different objects that are seen on the same ground. It is whether you're talking about Lamu or Turkana, that whereas the local people, particularly those who are not corrupted by what Dr. Otele has talked about as the political corruption of money and all that. The ones who see clearly what are the interests of the community, what is it they see on the ground, what objects. And then at the second level, we see the framing in terms of, or we try to see the framing in terms of same objects being given totally different meanings. So the concept of valuation, like you pointed out rightly, that land is not just a piece of thing for the community, or a space is not just a special thing that is monetarized for the local people. The state, using liberal concepts, market concepts, sees only what you call the monetary aspects that can be derived therefrom. So you can think of using that concept in a more robust manner that can enable you to connect the ground with what we call the assumptions of the elite from up there when they try to go down. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Obongi, I think you can respond to that.
Who? It's okay. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the thank you for the comments, the critiques, and the suggestions. I really appreciate them. So I'll just go over some, maybe I would name them as clarifications for your own benefit. So I'm sorry, as I hope this happens to all PhD students, I'm so much in my head with these projects and the data, and I think everyone knows about them, and I don't have to tell you when this project started, who is involved and all that. But the information is there in my thesis. And but maybe just to give you a clearer picture. So these projects are all stem from Vision 2030 in one way or another. And for the wind power, it was the construction started in 2014 and it was commissioned in 2019. For the oil exploration, the oil was discovered in 2011, but proper exploration started later on and still ongoing. The Lamu coal plant was supposed to be started in 2015, but it has never seen the light of day because of the ruling by the National Environmental Tribunal. And yes, in this project, as Dr. Obongi said, from my presentation, you see the state as being uniform, but I would like to clarify that it's not. When I go in detail in my case studies, there are instances where even state actors and agencies involved, and these are mostly agencies that are involved in regulation, whether it was NEMA. In some court cases, NEMA is the one who has been taken to court by the community, because NEMA is the one who issues the license. The Electricity Regulatory Commission has also been taken to court. The National Land Commission has been taken to court. So the state is not uniform in all this, both the agencies and also the actors. So in the Turkana case, we see one of the former governors being really pro-community and even providing funds for the community to go to court and all that. But the next governor is seen to be not in support of the community, but rather in support of the government. And also in the Turkana case, one of the hottest contestations is about the benefit sharing formula. So we see the county government going against the national government. So the initial formula was the national government to get 80, the county government 15, and then the community 5. But the county government was really against that and wanted a bigger share, and also a bigger share for the community. So the conflict it runs across various state agencies, actors, and at some point it's so dynamic in the sense that at some point one is in support of the project, and one is not in support of the project, or what is being decided about the project. So this of course involves a lot of lobbying, like in the Turkana case, after several lobbying attempts is when the formula was revised, and the community was still not satisfied with the formula revised, the 5%, but some political leaders from the county government encouraged them to accept. So it's there's a lot of politics to just put it as a uniform case where there is this group of proponents and this group of opponents. And then the resistance itself is also not uniform. In my categorizations of the conflict, I categorize the Lake Turkana wind power case as a reactive case. So the most of the contestations emerged after the project has been constructed, but before there was no a lot of resistance against it. In the oil explorations, it's also reactive. It is after the oil was extracted and was being now transported to Nairobi is when a lot of resistance emerged. But in the Lamu coal plant, which is the unique case in this, there was preventive resistance. So prevention started even before the project was implemented, and that's why it never got to happen in the first place. Thank you, Dr. Mbongi, for the suggestions about the books. I've seen some of them, but I'll go back to them and just look further for the frameworks. Dr. Gona's comment and also Oscar's comment about the management of expectations and the politics of anticipation. The question of why the communities still accept these projects or anticipate to get more from these projects even while others have failed. There are a lot of ways to answer these questions, but we need to also look at the context. These are marginalized communities which are now suffering from a lot of hunger, poverty issues. If coming in, I'm being told I'll get a job, I'll get this, it's very easy. And also some of the ways that are being used by the investors are very manipulative. For example, in one of my focus group discussions, the communities mentioned that when they were having consultations, one of the representatives of the investor asked them, do you want a bag of soil or a bag of money? So meaning, if you don't sign off the land for the project, you remain with your bag of soil. But if you allow us to go on, you get a bag of money. So between the two, which one do you pick? In the oil exploration in Turkana, there were instances where the village elders were being slaughtered for camels and goats, which is a very common practice for them as a way of appreciating the elders ahead of them allowing access to their lands. So some of the ways that are being used to really capture the attention of the community and allow them to readily accept these projects are almost manipulative in nature, and it is not helped by the situations in which they are in. So they still accept, and even some of the cases I've mentioned, that they are reactive. So meaning at first the community actually to some extent accepted these projects, but at some point when they saw that what they were promised is not being delivered is when now they start resisting. But there are various laws in place and also agreements that these promises that are made are encapsulated in some instances. There are MOUs, memorandum of understanding, but also the laws, like for example, the one I'm talking about the benefit sharing. The community should get 5%. So it's not only a promise, but it's also engraved in law, because there is the Local Content Act, which also says that when these projects are being implemented, if something is to be constructed, you need to get a constructor from the local. You don't need to get, in the Turkana oil, when the tallow oil employees were there, they were being supplied by vegetables and meat from Nairobi. So, but there's a law that says such things should be gotten from the local community. So there were issues around that, and that is what the community were demanding for. So they're not just all these ground promises, but also some things that they actually have a right to, and there are some laws that say that. So on the comment about public participation, yes, so that is one of the biggest issues, and I just passed over it as the free informed consent, but there are very many, again, manipulative practices that happen where meetings are done in places that are not communicated earlier to the communities, or done in far places that most people cannot get to. So these practices do not allow for inclusive participation, but it is by design, whether it's by the government or by the government, in, like, for example, the county government, the NEMA, or the investor. So it's by design that they do this to limit the public participation, and hence lower resistance. On the question about the relationship between global environmental movements and the local movements which are resisting in this case, yes, so global environmental movements, and also I don't want to just term them as environmental movements, because some categorize themselves differently, whether it's human rights organizations, and they played a very important role in all these. I've not mentioned a lot, but some of the members of the coalitions that were mobilizing were mostly human rights organizations and environmental groups that are global. So they not only helped financially, but also enable the local movements to connect their struggle to the global discourses, and even use words like human rights to explain some of the impending environmental implications that they thought would happen. So they played an important role in not only helping them frame the conflicts financially, but also advocacy and creating awareness. So there's a very strong relationship between the local movements and the global ones. Thank you, Sifuna, on the comment about the framing. So actually, framing will be one of my, I don't want to say analytical element, but I'm using discourse analysis at some point to look at how the actors are framing their demands. So, and as you importantly mentioned, even just from my example of the bag of sand or a bag of soil or bag of money, the different ways in which elements of the projects are framed by the actors really play an important role in also when they are making their cases, even in court, and also how they relate to other discourses. So when they're talking about, for example, their rights as indigenous people, they might not necessarily use the term indigenous people's rights, but the way they frame their relationship with their land and how they will lose a source of livelihood, or how this will affect them, and even their way of life. Because in the, like Turkana Wind Power case, we have a lot of complaints about the way their social life has changed. There is increase in prostitution, which was not there before, and also alcoholism. How they frame the changes in their lives also really portrays how the projects view this, the benefits that accrue to the community, and how the community views them. Because even in instances where school children are dropping out to go work in the oil exploration project, it can be viewed by the company as a way of creating employment, but it's affecting the community in a different way. So it's one thing to the other party, and it's another thing to the other party. So yes, that is a very important point. Thank you.
I think now we should go to the online audience, see if there are any questions. Okay. So we have this one question. Could the resistance partly be a result of government's top-down approach, which essentially does not effectively involve the local people? That's one question from Pamela Ngesa. Then, as an MA student of ecology at one university, I find this study to be groundbreaking. Finding it is from this that we can do a lot of mobilization, critique, and awareness in all arenas for such proposed projects. For instance, the nuclear plant proposed to be installed in Kilifi County. There's no baseline data for control of impacts in this project, or that this project has. See another one? So we have two questions waiting for your response, Valentine.
So the first question was about communities' involvement in decision making. Yes, it is one of the reasons, but it is not the only one. And as I spoke about my case studies and the framings, from what you see that is being demanded, clearly it's not just about involvement in decision making alone. And it also helps to view communities and not as homogeneous, but also not as an innocent party that is just asking for involvement, because they also, like in the Turkana, or they're asking for money. They want a share for what they think they are rightfully deserved. So it's a lot of demands from the different actors, and they have to back it up with justifications of why they are demanding for what they are demanding. So it's it may be difficult to really go and fulfill the demand of each stakeholder, but as they are using framings of ancestral rights and ancestral land rights and all this, it's important to look at also the laws and the histories of these communities to know, to determine what is owed to them, and deliver what is owed to them. So it's one of the issues, but it's not only the only issue that is fueling the resistance. And I didn't quite get the Kilifi one. Oh, it was a comment.
About the nuclear plants.
Oh yes, yeah. So even the nuclear plant is a new one, but it's not. Even there's also a wind power plan that is supposed to be happening around Kajiado that is also already building resistance. So there are quite a lot of these projects that are seemingly having the same reaction from the people. So yeah, it is important to really look at why they are still happening, even because the lessons supposed to be learned from the earlier projects in order to mitigate the next ones. But seemingly that is not happening. They are just repeating the same projects in different areas while still they are fueling resistance.
In addition to what you have indicated to us about the 3 projects that you are focusing on, could it be that in the case of Turkana wind project, if I get it right, that the people on the ground did not quite understand what was to be involved in the project, because you are looking at a project that involves somebody just tapping something that is in the air, that's something that moves around. And therefore the concept of property, what is it that you own? And what is it that you're going to lose if somebody is going to tap what moves around you, which you never quite utilize directly. That as opposed to tangible things like land could probably, this is just my speculation, that could probably be the reason why the resistance was after the project. That it is after the project that people perceived what was involved, the details of it, and therefore maybe made a kind of resistance. And this is just an observation, so you don't have to respond to it, but maybe you can think about it.
Yeah, I don't have to respond, but I actually want to talk about it because it's very important to me. And it was on the slides, but I didn't really explain it. It was on the slides about the frames where oil was seen as a resource, oil was seen as money, while in the wind case, they didn't really perceive that they will get benefits from the project because they didn't really think as wind as a resource at the time. And even in the court case, they are only asking for their land because they still don't think that they deserve compensation because the wind is not really ours. And also, when looking at the binary between the renewable and non-renewable projects, when now it comes to the framings of the arguments, is where this the source of the energy matters. So oil already has a bad rep as an environmental destroyer. So using such framings, the actors now are able to say, okay, we need more compensation because this will have a negative implication on us. But on the other hand, the wind power actors don't really have the footing to say, okay, you need to compensate us a lot because we will suffer from the consequences. And that is that really emerges when looking at even the framings from the proponents of the project, because the government, when it was talking about the oil, it was talking about is as money. We will get money, but in the wind power case, it was more about this putting us ahead in climate adaptation, and all that. So the source of the energy really also determine what issues emerge and how they are framed and contested.
Maybe something small.
Maybe something small. Valentine, now that you are a political scientist who is becoming a historian, have you seen any developments over time in the people's attitudes towards some of this project? I'm asking this because I think it was last year but one, I had a student who did the history of the last mile electricity in Mwingi. And he used what we call in history the subaltern approach, that is history from below, going to the local areas and listening to the narratives, what Malim Stuma was calling framing at the local level. And when he started this project over a period of around 15, 16 years, he actually realized that people were resistant in the initial days. But with time, the people of Mwingi have appropriated the last mile project in very ingenious ways that when you go to government records, actually government records count that project as a failure. But when you see the way people have appropriated it, it's ways that makes meaning to their framing of the reality and use of electricity. Probably that's something you need to think about. Look at things over time and within a certain space, and see how the local agency is appropriating these projects in their own terms and in their own ways. Thank you.
That's very important, but also I have to be adhere to my PhD timeline. So yes, I cannot study them for 15 years, but what I'm doing is looking at how the discourse is evolving from the start of the project even towards the end. And one interesting finding of mine from the oil case was, at first, they were talking about wanting a share of the profits, and that was involving lobbying with the government. But seemingly, as they were not getting what they wanted, the recent case of last year, now they are asking for compensation of about 252 billion from the investor, but they're framing the compensation as for environmental violence. Yes, so it's so the discourses are changing, and but it's also seen more of as a tool. So we are asking for money, but now we are not terming it as the revenue. Now we want it as compensation for violent environmental impacts.
That's why I said what Mr. was saying about
the dichotomy between local framing and Nairobi framing might be very useful to your work, and that would be of interest to historians. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the participation, active participation in the discussion. Thank you for your responses, very enlightening. I'm just wondering whether there are more people who would want to make comments or other responses, either here or online. Okay, the contribution, yeah. There's this other question from Manui. Contribution of other actors, government, donors, etc. Could this be echoed too in the study as agents influencing resistance? Contribution of other actors, government, donors, etc. Could this be echoed too in the study as agents influencing resistance.
Thank you, Petro. That is my colleague from my master's at Erasmus. So yes, of course, the contribution of actors, including the financials or the potential financials, is very important. So the Lamu coal plant was supposedly funded mostly by the Chinese. And one of the arguments that as to why this project failed is because of the reputation that China has globally, especially when it comes to coal. So it's seen as a very important factor in allowing the resistance to win in this case. And in the other cases, of course, with tallow oil coming from British, there are also there's a different politics involved, including some of the laws that are supposed to be followed in all this. And in the Lake Turkana wind power case, some of the interested financials included one arm of the World Bank. And eventually they pulled out because of the issues that, that followed. But if right from who is interested or who finances these projects determines also some of the laws that are followed, or some the reputation, for example, that China has really made people think that what they have done in other places they will do here. So that is very important. And some of the donors with even World Bank having stringent laws on how, even for example, the free informed consent should be done. So what is followed in each project is different based on the financials and the donors and the actors involved. So that is a very important point, and that I also talk about in talking about the background of the projects and who finances them.
Again, thank you all for the participation. We've come to the end of our discussion, and now I'll call upon Dr. Gona to come and give a vote of thanks.
Good evening, everybody. This has been a wonderful evening, afternoon, evening. Can we give Valentine another hand of applause? On my own behalf, on behalf of colleagues in the department, our students, colleagues who come from different parts of Kenya and the world, our online audience, I want to extend really gratitude to making it possible to attend physically and also for those online. It's always a great pleasure to have you. And again, I cannot overemphasize how you made all these seminars of the Department of History and Archaeology successful. I really look forward to seeing you again on the 8th. On the 8th, we're having a very special day. We're calling it perhaps a community day because we are celebrating one of these great Kenyan, a trade unionist, Makan Singh. We're going to have the Makan Singh annual lecture. We decided to include it as part of the seminar series for convenience, but this is a very special day. Professor Michael Chege is going to be our speaker, and in advance, I'm going to ask Dr. Mbongi, because he has written a paper. His latest publication is on Makan Singh. So I think Dr. Mbongi is going to lead us in the moderation on that day. So you are most welcome. Have a good evening, a good week. We see you on the 8th. Thank you very much.